you're muted. Matt, you muted yourself. Can you guys hear him? Matt, you muted. Can you? What happened? 1 second, folks. Matt seems to have muted. uh, Nate, Harry, can you guys?
Yeah. I could ad lib what he's saying. I could.
Lip
Yeah,
read
can,
from
we need subtitles.
technical difficulties.
Yeah, it was just working 3 seconds ago. We still don't hear you, Matt. We're working diligently. There's a team of trained monkeys in the background that are working to fix this problem, and we will have this sorted in just a second. Oh, there you go,
Hello,
Matt.
can anyone hear me?
Yeah. Yay.
Okay, somehow my microphone got muted. But I can't hear anything. Ron, can you say something? All right, I come. Give me 1 sec. I'm gonna duck out of this and refresh and come back. So why don't Harry or Nate, one of you guys take off for a little bit while I somehow messed up my mic immediately before this started.
Nah, sounds good.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. While we wait for Matt, welcome to the last town hall of the year, if I don't miss my calendar. So I think we're going to be, once Matt gets back, we're going to be talking about the year in review, our plans for the upcoming year, or Matt's plans for the upcoming year, which I'm excited to find out what we're doing. He's going to let everybody know at the same time.
Well, we have some ideas, right? I mean,
Yeah.
land is an obvious one, and we're probably going to come out with a mini set probably at some point. So we have an idea of some of the things. Looks like
All
Matt's
right,
back.
I'm back. I can hear you guys now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, that was false start. False start. Let's try again. All right. Welcome everyone to the final town hall of 2023. An auspicious start to it. It was. It's December 18th, and we're gonna kind of do an overview of the past year. Thank you to Ron who went ahead and put together a list of everything that happened over the past year, at least the major highlights. So we're just going to talk through that. And, just even me looking at it was like, wow, I did not remember that we did a lot of these things this year. And of course, as I think you guys were talking about, I will share kind of high level my thinking for next year. At very high level for like detailed item by item thing. We're going to work internally with the team to figure out what we can do, who can work on what, and realistic timing for those things. But at a high level, I have some thoughts I wanted to share, and then land. Obviously, we've been releasing the pieces of the white paper. One piece at a time. We're kind of almost done with that, and the full kind of phase 2 white paper draft will be released. And again, I want to remind everyone that this is a draft, and it's a draft for a reason. These are kind of the high level designs and concepts and ideas. I've had a lot of good feedback from people so far with what's been released. And this is going to be a work in progress. So I want to really work with the community and the team internally to come up with the best way to structure and build all this stuff out. So this is going to be a work in progress, and it's going to change a lot, I expect, before the final release. So to start, I'll do kind of a 2023 year in review, and anyone else on the call, feel free to jump in if I forgot anything, or if you have comments on anything, or I guess I should say if Ron forgot anything, because he put together the list for me. I definitely didn't do this all on my own. But this is mostly, I believe, in chronological order. So thank you again, Ron, for going through everything and putting it in order. One of the first things we did was the current SPS governance system, so we could have community proposals. If you guys remember back last year, Splinterlands was the only one who could put up proposals. There were no proposals coming up from the community. I think that's been an amazing thing. One of the things I'm generally like most happy about and excited to talk about and tell people about Splinterlands, because that's really like shows what we're doing differently than most games, even in the Web3 space. We had DEC batteries, and the sale of that was introduced. Uh, we introduced the ability to have 3 rule sets in ranked battles at the higher league, which again I also thought really added a lot of depth to the game. Season rentals were introduced this year. That's been a big one that I'd also like to see. More come from in the future. Soulbound reward cards, so the current reward set, that was introduced earlier this year. Uh, the Adding market listing fees and market expiration, which I think really helped with a lot of things on the market. The new energy system for Splinterlands ranked battles that replaced the old like ECR system. Chaos Legion set sold out. That was just earlier this year. Land 1.0 was released earlier this year, so that was just the ability to uh, what's it called? Redeem your plot tokens and tract and region tokens, and get your individual land plots, and survey them and see what type of plots they are. So that was very exciting earlier in the year. We introduced the guild power system, which again is going to be part of a larger guild rework that we're looking to do, and addresses some issues around how guild contributions worked in the past. Bots were blocked from Modern League, which was the result of one of those player community proposals. And so that's been really interesting to have an all human Modern League versus the aptly named Wild League. Um, the SPS staking multiplier for ranked battle rewards was added in. This was one of those things that was talked about in the SPS white paper back in 2021, and we finally started, adding in the need to stake SPS tokens in order to earn them and other rewards from battles, which is just, obviously an important part of how the whole economy works. We had the big DEC burn event for our 5-year anniversary back in May. I think that burned something like 500 million DEC and got cool titles like the Burninator and the Scorcher and things like that, among other rewards. As we've talked about, I look forward to doing more burn events in the future. Hopefully, as soon as the next couple months, we'll look to have another one of those. Um, on the bad side of things, had to restructure the company and let some people go, unfortunately. But I think that will ultimately put us in a much better position going forward. We have very significantly reduced our expenses. We've split up the different business units so they can get the focus that they deserve, and kind of tried to address some of the issues that we had going up to that point in managing the company. We had the Dow hiring Claiborne, which again was one of those big milestones, in my opinion, for the separation of the Dow and the company, and showing where the community has a big part and ownership in this. And they're, the community, you guys are running your own business here that is, working with Splinterlands together in order to make this whole ecosystem grow. So that was a big milestone to me. I'm very happy to see that move forward. And then, of course, Land 1.5 was released, as I'm sure you all know. Then, shortly afterwards, Rebellion was released, which we've talked about ad nauseum how innovative and cool that is. So I'm not going to get into it too much more right now. And then just recently, Rift Watchers sold out. So I hope you guys got some final Rift Watchers packs. It was a busy busy year, especially when you look back on it from that perspective. Yeah, I'm super proud of the team for just getting all that out, and really, the almost complete lack of major technical problems that came with all of these things is really to be commended. I mean, I know I've talked about this before, but I still have PTSD in the past from every release like these things, and there would be major issues and problems, and customer support would be overwhelmed, the site would crash, we'd have to refund tons of people, who knows what the various issues were. we really didn't have anything at all that I can remember that was remotely at that level. Everything was much smaller, much easier, more easily taken care of. So I mean, I just could not be happier with the team that we have in place now, and what they're able to do, and what they're able to deliver on. So that brings us into next year, and I guess I'll go to after I talk about kind of high level what I'm thinking for next year. I was going to go, jump to Harry to talk about very specifically. We're not going to have any releases, I think, in December. So the next one will be in January, and he can kind of talk about that, and that'll be near term. I was going to focus more high level, and we haven't done our internal planning with the team yet, so that's why I'm keeping this very high level. Uh, you know, Investigator was nice enough to actually write down an entire list of things, like literally everything that we've talked about or planned or thought about doing in the game. Ideas from the community, and it is a super super long list. There's absolutely no way we're going to get to everything on that list in 2024. Probably not even in 2025 too. But it's a great starting point for us to prioritize, and we'll try to knock out some of the smaller things in between some of the larger things. But from a larger perspective, here's where my head is at least for 2024. um, Land is a given, so that shouldn't be a surprise. We're working on the white paper for land 2.0. I'm going to be starting, once we have this draft out. I've also started on the humongous spreadsheet, right? So all of those 30 plus buildings, we're going to need exactly how many resources they produce per production point at each level, exactly how much of each resource it takes to upgrade them to each level, exactly how many mana crystals you get, or desalinization crystals, or time crystals, or different. Every single different token, how much elixir you're going to get for adding liquidity. Like, it's going to need to be a massive spreadsheet project, to kind of come up with all that. So that's going to be my main focus from a product design perspective. But aside from the land project, I feel like we can, with our team size, I look at us having kind of two major projects throughout the year. So land is one of them, and the other one I would like us to focus on is the new player onboarding experience. And this is one, obviously, the community's been talking about for a while, and it's one that it frustrates me significantly because we've never gotten a chance to work on it because it doesn't bring us revenue in the short term. And over the last, like, at least 18 months, I'd say, our focus had been so much on, we need revenue now. So what can we do that gets pack sales, or any sales of things? And it was less focused on how can we put the game in a better position to grow and increase revenues sustainably over the long term. And part of the whole company restructuring we did was purposely to put us in a position where we could think longer term. And I think to do that, we need to be able to bring in new players. We need to keep those new players, and we need to be able to take advantage of marketing. Our marketing efforts, I think, were always, not very effective in the past. Not because we didn't do, good things in marketing, or we didn't have good people doing the marketing. It was because the product was too difficult. Once you got new people in here, the product is very geared toward you guys who have been around for years and been through all this and already know everything and how it works. So I would like to focus, like, really have our core focus of the business, aside from land 2.0, to be on this new player onboarding experience. And that's more than just the tutorial, right? It's not about having a better tutorial. That's one part of it, but it's like kind of everything. It includes even our mobile app, right? A lot of people that come in, the first thing they do is download the mobile app, and that right there is a bad new player onboarding experience. So I want us to focus on, we've had this tech modernization project that's been worked on a bit and stopped, and worked on a bit and stopped. Like, I want to really take the time to push that in order to get us to a position where we have a single code base that runs our desktop website and our mobile app. And that will allow us to have a situation where the mobile app always gets updated automatically every time we add new features. And we don't have to say, yeah, we're adding these new features and maybe we'll get to the mobile app, which is separate later on. So that's a big part of the new user onboarding experience. Um, Obviously we need, I think, a much better tutorial system, which goes far beyond how do you actually do a battle, and goes into, even after that, once you're playing, how do you acquire cards? How do you rent cards? What are all the different tokens? How do you use them? Like all these, there's so many more parts to the game than just the actual battles. And I think it would be great to have, like, tutorials or help tips or just things to help guide new players, at different points in their process through the whole game, joining guilds and the benefits of all these things. And then we've talked about in the past also having simple one-click set rentals or even purchases. So when new players come into the game, maybe they get up into Bronze League and they start losing a lot. Instead of having them just be frustrated and leave, um, it would be great to have them, have us, have help tips and pop-ups and just be like, hey, for $5, you can just click a button here, pay, purchase your credits via PayPal, and it will automatically rent you, uh, a bronze and a complete bronze level deck, or for whatever the price ends up being. Um, and so they don't have to worry about at that point. They're brand new. Worry about what cards do I rent? How do I rent it? It's complicated. We just pull up things and boom, they click a button and it just rents all the cards off the market. And I think if we can implement that and make it easy, it will also kick off our rental market considerably. Those cards are going to come from all of you, our players, who will put them there to be available to be rented. And if we're able to get lots of new players into the game who are just clicking that button, it could even potentially be part of the spell book. The spell book right now gives 3,000 credits, I believe. Uh, you know, that may be enough, or maybe we bump that up a little and just have it be like when you buy a spell book, it also comes with a season rental. Um, and so if you think about, if we, if the market kind of picks up, we start doing some marketing and advertising and we get new players in, and everyone that buys a spell book is also renting cards from you, the players, off the market, how much that can do for the rental market and card values in general. So, there's even more things. I won't go into all of them, but to me, like, at a high level, I don't want to keep going on this same path of, just what more can we sell to our existing user base. And that's going to put us in a little bit of a difficult position, in that, we're not on super great financial ground. It's definitely better than it was. Cutting expenses helped. The market going up has helped. I'm still working on raising money, although that is always a long and difficult process. So I don't have uh, any specific updates to share there. Um, so we're definitely, obviously, going to make sure we have the resources to keep funding and running the business while we're focusing on these longer term things. And it's also going to mean that, from the player's perspective, we may not be focusing on as many new features for the existing players as we would have otherwise. Right. I mean, if you look at or I guess you can't look at it. I have it in front of my face, but we just talked about it. The list of all the things that we did in the past year, in 2023, I mean, pretty much all of those things were stuff for our existing players. um, and I would like to have a lot of the focus on in 2024, aside from land, being on how do we get new players in, and how do we get them hooked like all of you are now. How do we get them spending, buying things, whether it's from Splinterlands, the company, the DAO, or from existing players on the markets. And I think that's gonna be how we really just, like, grow this thing immensely. But it's gonna take, I don't know, 6 to 12 months of focusing on that, and less on other things. And if we can do that, and we do that as we go into, hopefully a bull market generally, then it'll allow us to really focus on marketing, right? To really get, I'd like to, try to, once this is kind of all done, we're talking about later in the year, next year, really look at some successful Web3 marketing uh, avenues. I know there's lots of projects, like really crappy projects, honestly, that just know how to hit Web3 and crypto marketing really well. And if we can bring that into Splinterlands, along with a really good onboarding experience, I think that's just going to do 100 times more for this game and the assets and the community than just continuing to release new stuff for you guys to buy. So that's something that both, from my perspective and the company's perspective, we're going to have to make sure we're in a financial position to do that. and to not worry about short-term revenue for a while. And from the community's perspective, I would be looking for support from the community to say, hey, yeah, this is a worthwhile thing for the company to be spending its time and resources on, and it's going to take a little while, and we may not have as many other features coming out in the meantime. That being said, obviously, this is not the only thing we're going to do. There's going to be smaller things. We're all going to be constantly having smaller updates and releases, and working on little changes here and there. We plan to do some, like I said, some burn events, probably some promo cards. But as far as like major focuses for next year, to me, it's land and really great new player onboarding experience, and then allowing us to take advantage of marketing and promotional opportunities. So I'm gonna take a little break there. Um, Investigator, do you want to talk about short term what we're looking at for early January?
Sure. There's a couple of things I'd like to touch on for 2023 too. Something to from Nate's department. We did also get pretty much all new music across the entire website in 2023. New battle music. And tech modernization did advance. The collection page, the market, all of the proposals and DEC, SPS pages all got moved over. So even though that's been a slow project, it has advanced a little bit in 2023. So I'm pretty sure for the next update, which should be hopefully the first weekend in January, um, the hope is that conflicts will go out, which I think everybody is kind of expecting. Hopefully, people on the Mavs server got a chance to test that out. We are in kind of a odd period at the end of the year here, where Rebellion wrapped up. We're about to talk about what we're doing in 2024. So some of the Rebellion teams kind of free at the moment, so they're picking up some various smaller items out of the backlog that they've wanted to do or they think would be a good idea. So we should be seeing a pack opening history and pack opening replay coming in the next update, which is a nice feature that Antioch has been working on. Hopefully, we will get all of the remaining issues cleared up from Rebellion gameplay related items. I think we got most of them last week, but there may be one or two outstanding. I think one got reported since that release. And those are kind of the big items. I expect we'll probably end up with a bunch more since we've got a couple weeks worth of time, though people will be taking time off for the holidays. But I expect a pretty big update on the 2nd, I believe, is the next first Tuesday in January.
Cool. Yeah, I didn't know if you guys were going to jump right in on the 2nd or wait a week, but I guess we'll see where we stand after the holidays. Yeah, I mean it's great to hear. Also, one of the things I wanted to try to do, and this is part of the reason why we pushed Rebellion to January instead of last week, was we need to give the team a break. We need to take a little breather. It's been a really insane like past 3 to 6 months or so. But yeah, I feel like a lot of the team, even still takes a bunch of that time and is like, we're going to go in and kind of fix some smaller issues or things that bug us as players, which is just great to see, and why it's so fun working here and as part of this, because it's not just like, oh yeah, I can take time off, so I'm totally not going to think about Splinterlands. A lot of the people working here, if not everybody working here, play Splinterlands. So when they're playing Splinterlands over the break, and they get annoyed by certain things that aren't working right or could be better, well, we kind of take the opportunity to jump in and fix them, and I think that's fantastic, and it's exactly the type of like ecosystem that we want, and type of company and culture that we want. Just like people do this because they like doing it, not because they feel like they have to. So there's going to be a breather for the next couple weeks as far as releases and things in the game, and then we'll look to pick right up in January and get started on all this. Um, Nate, I know, I'm not sure if that you have anything specifically to share today, but if you want to jump on and talk or, share any thoughts, anything you want with the community,
Yeah.
go for it.
No, I'm pretty darn stoked about the overall new player experience, onboarding, all of that stuff. I mean, it's something that I've I've wanted for a long time, and now that it's happening, it feels almost surreal. Although it is scary as well, because when you think about it, I mean, it's kind of like one of those "be careful what you wish for" that some of the community's been wanting. But I mean, keep in mind, it does signal, perhaps the closing of accumulation opportunities. Like, you guys have been flying under the radar, taking advantage of the steep learning curve, or that not everyone gets it, and you've been like, but you get it. You see the promised land like we do, and you grab as much as you can. And the more we improve the overall user experience for the new player and veteran players as well, for everybody, the more the light bulbs are going to go off with more and more people, and pretty soon there'll be more pushing and shoving. There'll be more. There'll be all those assets will become more scarce, hopefully. Um, but yeah, it's exciting. I'm pretty stoked. I think that it kind of leads into like, well, what are we doing right now? Are we Christmas caroling out on the streets right now? No, creative is already has their nose to the grindstone. We are currently, I guess, what we're working on right now for December is we're trying to polish up and finish up our branding stuff. And when I say branding, I don't know if many people noticed that the logo on the home page kind of looks slightly different now. It's been something I've been wanting to do for a long time. That the original logo was made years ago under a time crunch, and I was sitting there trying to make it real fast. And I always meant to go back and refine it or polish it up a little bit. Now we had the opportunity to do so. Um, and I think we have some new artwork that I'll share when it's ready. But essentially, between the artwork that's going to represent the game as a whole, the new polished, beautiful logo and branding and things like that, and then the copy, I have Cal Jericho, one of our narrative designers, is working hard. In fact, I think I just saw this morning that he has something for me to review, which is going to be the copy that will replace on all the DApp tracking sites or the game sites or all the portals out there or websites out there that talk about Splinterlands. There's a lot of old or obsolete information out there, and it needs to be updated. And we want to make it as compelling and as cool as possible to let people know, hey, what is Splinterlands really about? What can you expect? What are the pros and advantages and benefits of being in our ecosystem? So the fact that we're kind of putting the finishing touches on all that, and the fact that we're starting the new year talking about the onboarding experience and all that, it's just like the stars in alignment. Everything is kind of, all the pieces are coming together. What's something else? Something else that kind of leads into that as well is the rebellion. Even though we launched it, it hasn't stopped. We still have conflicts on the way, which Matt already alluded to, coming out early next year, January, and then we have all the airdrops that coincide with the conflicts. And the great thing about conflicts is that it gives people the slightest taste of what it would be like to have our game have a little bit more hand holding, a little bit more explanation, a little bit more understanding of what's going on this page and how do I interact with it and what's it all about and why do I want to do it. All of that, we're kind of giving you the slightest taste in something what we're calling the Battle Mage Academy, and we're assigning a little icon to the academy. And so that starting off with conflicts, you'll click on that little icon, and a little slider pops out and it says, hey, what am I looking at on this page? What's a wagon? Why do I want to interact with it? What's going on here? And the little slide out kind of details that. At the end of it, you can kind of click on a button to go to get more information, maybe from a blog article or maybe from tech support or something along those lines. But I think it's about more than just a tutorial that we slap at the front. Like Matt said, it's about this cohesive thing that bleeds into every aspect and pore of the website and the game. As you see this little icon pop up in more and more places, even veteran players, not just new players, will hopefully benefit a lot. Because I mean, I haven't memorized all 80 abilities in the game and every little nuance that comes along with them. And I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot that even veteran players can get value from something like that. So I'm stoked about that, and the fact that conflicts. I think Joey, our narrative designer, has been um, coordinating with Dennis, our CCO, in making sure that the legal documents get put out to those who won at the top of the leaderboard for the pre-sale, and we're really excited to start, figuring out what these legendary summoners are going to be like, and I mean, it's going to be cool. I mean, the summoners are in the set are already cool, but I can only imagine what a freaking legendary summoner will be like in Rebellion, knowing that Rebellion has changed how the game is so dramatically. Battles 2.0 refinement, like I said in previous town halls, Battles 2.0, it didn't get tossed out the window, but it's happening little by little, sliver by sliver. And I've been tossing Ulid, our one of our developers, Melon Man, the assets that we want to be working on starting next year, such as how's the arena going to look like when you play in ranked play, and how many animations can we kind of integrate into the screens, whether it's tactics or afterwards. What kind of refinement and polish can we give to all those gameplay screens that you say, whoa, that was an amazing battle, not just because of the mechanics, but because how beautiful and interactive the animations were and how cool it looked. You just can't wait to share with the world at large, your friends, your family, or social media. Hey, come look at this. This is cool. And get a few oohs and ahs while we're at it. So I think that'll be exciting, particularly as we work on the onboarding experience. Of course, every time we end a set, creative usually starts thinking right away about the next set. So we've already been thinking about that. Like, okay, what is not just the theme or the overall or overarching storyline or whatever, but also, how can we get some prompts to the art team so that they can kind of like little by little not be caught with their pants down when it comes time to finally release that mini set or whatever 6 months down the road, or whenever we end up releasing or launching more cards into the game. So whether it's reward cards or whether it's a mini set or whether it's even way down the road, our next core set, it's something that creative thinks about in the long term, because it does take a while to kind of like get all that artwork sorted out. And then, of course, the big one, bam, land 1.6 and 2.0. And for those of you guys who have been reading Matt's blog posts regarding sneak peeks into the land 2.0 white paper, wow, you already know it's mind blowing. It's crazy. And for the creative team, it's even crazier because there's a lot there, a lot that requires some UI and UX and art and animation, and all the rest. And I've already have the art team kind of working on concepts right now at the sketch level, which I'll be sharing over the next few town halls, beginning of next year, to kind of take you on the journey of what it's like to start preparing for this huge thing that is 2.0 as we get ready to release more and more of it. But from what I've seen, wow, some of the sketches we made for progression of the buildings and some of the resources and all kinds of other stuff, it's really cool to start seeing it start to come together already. And we're going to be ready to hit the ground running, just sprinting like crazy come January with all that stuff. So that's stuff that creative is working on today, right now. We're either giving it some thought, we're conceptualizing it, or we've already put some time and effort in, and it's already being handed off little bit by bit to engineering. So I think next year's going to be crazy. In fact, I got my Vonok shirt on right now in preparation for 2024. I think everyone's going to be screaming Vonok next year. It's looking pretty bright. So that's what we've got going on.
Yeah, thank you, Nate. The art and creative team is usually always like way ahead of us, at least if not in like creating the assets, in at least imagining and designing out like a million things that we can do. And so you guys will obviously be very key in this whole new user onboarding experience thing, as like, how do we design that experience? How does it look? How does it work? Everything. It's less of a graphical problem and definitely a UI UX uh, thing to work on. So yeah, looking forward to see what you guys put together for that. And now that you'll have the development resources to actually implement those things. So I know you guys have already done a lot of that in the past, and have thought about it. And hey, can we do this and that? But there's, we've been always focusing on other things. So that's going to change. Um, I will talk about Soulkeep now because I know chat's been talking about that. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, Soulkeep's a really crappy situation, a really difficult situation all around. I was personally not a fan of taking on the Soulkeep project from day one and was very against it. I wasn't, obviously in charge of those things. And a couple months ago when I've taken over, it was one of the things that was dumped on my lap. Is like, here's a big mess that was created. Now figure out how to fix it. But that's what I am trying to do. Right. That's my number one thing. My whole thing, and the reason I'm here and doing this job generally, is that we have made lots of promises to players. We've taken a lot of money from players. Players have put a lot of faith in us, uh, for all different sorts of things, and I'm here to figure out how to deliver on that and deliver on all of it, and that includes Soulkeep. So one of the, so, but what the difficulty is that launching a new game is extremely difficult, and I feel like that's one of the things that was not taken into account at any point from when we started to plan that game and do the initial sales. And it was more of a, yeah, we just hire a third party development company to build it, and then you just launch it and it's done and we go on and do other things. But that wouldn't have, that's not what I don't think our players in our community would want. Just like it's built and it's launched and then we forget about it and do other things. To really launch an entire game, you have to put a whole team on that indefinitely, right? It would need to have new features, it would need to have its own marketing and promotion and support and everything. So that's the situation where we find ourselves in. And at this point, if we say, okay, we're gonna, the code is mostly built. It was, the third party Double Coconut. They did actually a really good job building out the game and the code, and it was more just than waiting on us to actually launch the game, which we didn't have and don't have the resources to do right now. And anything that we did, if we take the time to launch Soulkeep, that's going to take away from our limited resources that we have to put into Splinterlands. So I don't want to just go and rush into doing that. My assumption, and I believe it's correct, is that pretty much everyone who has bought Soulkeep packs is also a Splinterlands player, also has Splinterlands assets. And the number one thing is to try to do, to make everything right for everyone as a whole, right? You're all part of this ecosystem. I feel like we don't have many people that are just Soulkeep people, if anyone. So I'm trying to do what's best for everyone in this community as a whole. And I don't believe focusing our resources on Soulkeep right now is the way to do that. That being said, I don't want to just leave it there. I don't want to forget about it. I do want to get the game launched. So my plan and what I've been working on, which we don't have anything finalized yet, is to have a third party that doesn't just build the game, but actually launches the game and runs the game, and probably really just owns and operates the game and it will still run and be part of the Splinterlands ecosystem, but it'll be more of a thing, less like we just hire a development company and then launch more games ourselves, since we don't have the resources to do that, and more like other game companies can build their own games and run and operate their own games, but they utilize the Splinterlands ecosystem. They utilize our NFTs and our marketplaces, and they implement, SPS and DEC tokens into the games, and that's a much more scalable model, right? We definitely don't have the resources to be launching and operating many games. That's part of what kind of got us into the position that led to our restructuring earlier in the year. But if we can create this ecosystem in such a way where third parties can build games and they utilize our assets and they gain benefits such as access to our community and our services from doing that, that's a scalable model, right? Then we just have to make sure our markets operate, and and our APIs and things work, which we do anyway. We need them for Splinterlands. But we don't have to worry about actually operating and running multiple different games. So I'm currently in talks to have a third party take over and run Soulkeep and launch Soulkeep as their main focus. So that way it gets launched, and there's a team and a company that's focused on growing it and building that game, while still obviously integrating it within the Splinterlands ecosystem. So to me, that's that's the best way to handle this situation. And obviously all this stuff, there's legal work involved, and there's planning, and this stuff takes time, but I think this is the best of both worlds ultimately, where we can focus our limited resources on Splinterlands and the stuff I just talked about earlier, and there's a third party that can really focus on growing Soulkeep, as part of this, like a part of the Splinterlands ecosystem. And that could actually lead to, if that does well, right? Then other third parties might say, "Hey, we want to build a game, or we have a game, and we want to integrate it with the Splinterlands ecosystem because that's a great way to launch a new game or something, and we want to, use the SPS token, or allow things to be purchased with fixed amounts of DEC or whatever." So, yeah. First of all, I apologize to everyone for how this has turned out to date. It's not how I wanted it to turn out. But I've been given a whole bunch of different problems to go solve, and it's only been 2 months so far. um, and Soulkeep is high on that list of, like, figure out how, not only how we can just solve it. I don't want to just say, hey, we could just say, hey, we launched the game, right, and it's launched and you can play it, and then we forget about it and go back to Splinterland stuff. But that does a disservice to everyone also. So I want to not just launch it, but I want to put it in a situation where it itself can grow and become hopefully a large and successful product on its own. It's not just the side thing that we launched and forgot about. Um, so that's at a high level where Soulkeep is and what we're trying to do with the system. I'm definitely open to, if people have other thoughts or comments or suggestions. I'm always open to that. But from where I sit, this is the best way to really provide value to to everyone as a whole in this ecosystem, which is Soulkeep and Splinterlands and SPS and the DAO and everything. So that's where we are with that. And if you guys have questions, I was planning to jump right into questions now. So I'm going to start with the pre sorted questions that were from earlier. But then after that, we're going to take questions from the audience in Discord, and we can try to also do in the other channels, which I have up on my screen here. So Ron, you can feel free to jump in here or there if there's when we get to the open question section, if there's questions that come in from the other channels, and I'll try to answer them as quickly as I can. Is there anything else either you guys wanted to talk about before we jump into the questions section?
Nope.
Actually, what I haven't all this time talked about land at all, other than saying that's going to be a focus for next year.
Right.
So let me. I apologize. Let me take like 5-10 minutes. I'm gonna to talk about land phase 2 specifically a little bit, and then we'll jump into the questions, which I expect there's going to be a bunch about land phase 2 anyway, so we can get into more detail. Um, but yeah, at a high level, we have a whole bunch of things that we're calling phase 1.6, right? Stuff that it was supposed to be in phase 1.5 but isn't in there yet. So that's going to be the more immediate priority for the land team, um, is to get those things done, and that's the things like obviously the DEC and grain market, titles, and combining totem fragments, and there's a whole bunch of things we've listed out in the past. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. And then the white paper we've talked about is a draft. It's going to be an ongoing design process. I'm going to be working on all the detailed numbers with help from the team. So we look for input from the community. We've already had a bunch. People have reached out and brought up good suggestions or problems or things we need to consider about some of the pieces of the white paper that have been released already. And that's going to be a work in progress over the next 6 months or so, of just really like getting that solid to a really good state, while the team also starts working on it. And as much as possible, if there's any things we can do where they can be released on their own, before the full phase 2 is done, we'll take the opportunity to do that. I mean, obviously, anytime we can release things, it's beneficial to do so. Players get things ahead of time. We get to try things out ahead of time. We make the big full release smaller and less risky. So a lot of the stuff obviously all interacts together and kind of needs to be released together, but I think there are certain pieces of it that we can probably get out before that. But overall, I think once we get to phase two, that's where we really start to see the full land experience. I mean, I've mentioned that 1.5 is purposely very small. It's very simple. There have been players that have complained to me that it's boring or there's not much to do. Yeah, it's just a very initial release to get something out and get people kind of playing with it and how it works. Phase two is where the real game of it is going to come in, as in, keeping track of the economy and all the different resources, and how to optimize your land, and what kind of niches you should focus on, and all these things. um, and then my hope is that future phases are not that far behind, because as we introduce the summoner tactics in Rebellion, that's pretty much the mechanism for how we envision item and spell cards working. So since a lot of that's already done and out and being tested and played in production, my hope is that while phase two is kind of the big one with all the buildings and all the resources and everything like that, the next part is really just creating the items and spell cards. So my hope is that there's actually less work at that point, and we see things kind of start falling into place more quickly after phase two is released, and we get the items and spell cards reasonably soon, and you'll be able to start use them in the game, and that's where the economic value really comes in land. Um, so that's a high level, the plan and what's going on with land. And I want to mention it again. I really am looking for feedback from the community about everything in the white paper, and that everything we're doing, different ideas, and we want to try to incorporate those as much as possible. So that's my quick spiel on land. Um, I'm going to jump into the pre-sorted questions that we have from the town hall channel before the chat began. The first one is about guild power for mana crystals. Can you explain how the guild power for mana crystals will work? How far back does Splinterlands track contributions? If someone's in a guild, they contributed 100k guild power, and then they leave and they come back. Now they're at zero again. Is that guild power lost in terms of mana crystals? Yeah. So this is based on the new guild power system. Um, which was set up in such a way that if you leave the guild and you retain, I think it's 90% of your guild power. So if you come back or you join a different guild, you still retain guild power. Um, and so that's kind of how we plan it, that we plan to track it based on how much current guild power you have active in a guild at the time. So it definitely will not count anything before the guild power system went into effect, which was earlier this year. um, but the idea is that however much guild power each player actively has contributed to a guild, um, again, which should come with them when they leave the guild, 90% of it. That's what will count for mana crystals. And also, that being said, we just talked about how this is a draft. If we start to think through this and put this in place and it doesn't make sense, or people have better ideas on how this should work, we'll take that into account. This is definitely not the way it may always work, or even work by the time we get to the actual first release. But that was the thinking, was that it's the amount of guild power that you have currently contributed to guilds. And so if you leave a guild, you will lose a portion of that. Um, but only 10%.
I'm guessing the question revolved around the fact that when you donate your guild power to a guild, usually there's like a little checkbox. Hey, do you want to donate it? In other words, waive your rights to take 90% and go to some other guild or whatever. So I think maybe that's where the little gray area was like, hey,
Oh yeah.
do they have to click the checkbox or not?
No. So if you are donating it to a guild, it means you're giving it up. It's really not yours anymore, right? And that was meant to be only for very specific situations, where, like, some larger guild was, like, larger gaming guild outside of Splinterlands was, like, maybe setting up multiple guilds for people. Or in the past we've done promotions where Splinterlands would pay for guild contributions for certain new guilds if they bought certain things. I don't know if we're going to do that again, but that's really that situation where, like, Splinterlands, we wouldn't be in the guild, right? We were just setting it up. So we would donate this DEC and this guild power. We'd put it in the guild. It's no longer ours. and then we leave and it just stays in the guild. So for the vast majority of the cases, the thinking was that players would just contribute their guild power to the guild, not donate it, so it's still theirs and they still keep it when they leave. And that's where you would get the mana crystals from. Again, if that is not what's happening, I haven't looked at any data or talked to people about that. We'll rethink the system, but that was the thinking behind it currently. Thank you, Nate, for reminding me about that. The next questions are about proposals. Matt, have you looked at the league lock proposal? Do you have a vision as to what you would like to do to fix the ranked play system as it sits now? Your thoughts on that proposal and fixing ranked play would be appreciated. Yeah, I have looked at the proposal, and obviously it's been talked about even for a while before the proposal. So one of the things that I think is also part of the whole new player experience, onboarding experience, is kind of a rework generally of the ranked play system, and that's both for new players and for existing players. I have a lot of thoughts in my head that I don't really want to share right now because they're very just like preliminary thoughts, and the community generally tends to take some of those things and run with it and get upset sometimes. So, but I'm not a huge fan of the league lock system. It makes sense with how things are now. Um, but I don't like the idea of people like choosing leagues and purposely deciding to stay in a league, especially a lower league. I would like it to be a system where everyone is always incentivized to move up in leagues. And there should, like, right now we have these separate leaderboards for each league. So we're purposely saying to people like, hey, don't move up to the next league. Like if you're trying for the leaderboard, stay in a lower league. And that to me is not, I don't think it's the right way to look at things. And a lot of these things were sort of like band-aid fixes from, the system worked one way and it caused problems. And we just like, change something here to try to fix that problem. But I want to actually, again, as part of this whole rethinking of the onboarding experience and the general gameplay experience, I want to start from scratch and say, forget about how the system currently works or has worked in the past or any of that. And if we were designing this from scratch right now, what is the best way to make this system work? What is the best? And I think what I would focus on there is how it's just, it should always, under every single circumstance you can possibly think of, be better for players to move up. It should be better for players to get higher level cards. It should never be a situation where players say, nope, I am just staying in bronze. I want to stay in bronze. It's better for me to stay in bronze. And I don't want to move up to silver. I don't want to get higher level cards. That to me is like just the wrong way of thinking about this system, and it's sort of holding a lot of things back. So I want to really rethink the whole thing and get it to a situation where players can play. They can also spend, but the combination of those things has them just constantly, slowly moving up through the system, and that's always good. And there was no situation at all where anyone would be like, "Nope, I want to stay back in bronze." And even with the reward cards now, the soulbound reward cards, there's a lot of people who stay in bronze and they like being in bronze, but they're getting their reward cards to higher level, and they can't take advantage of those, right? It's just a waste for them, and that's a problem too. So I feel like the way this system is currently set up, if it's not set up properly, it leads to all these little problems. And if you get in the situation of, okay, now put a band-aid on this problem, and then two more pop up, and put a band-aid on this, and you get what probably something similar to the US government. And I want to work with the team and the community and everyone. That's why I don't want to share specific ideas now, because I don't have them fleshed out, but just talk to everyone, get ideas. And like, if we were starting from scratch, how would we build this system the right way where players can always take advantage of having higher level cards? It should never be, if people are coming to me and saying, this sucks, I have my soulbound reward cards are a gold league, but I only play in bronze or silver. Like that's wrong to me. Like players are annoyed that their cards are too high level, right? That's an issue with our system. So I'm doing the thing that I usually do of like going off on a long tangent. But so the league lock proposal, I think, does a really good job of kind of like fixing some of the little issues that we currently have. But I feel like it's also might pop up some unintended issues, and it doesn't really fix the whole thing at the core, like really what I think the problems are. So I don't dislike the league lock proposal. It's a great proposal for some of the current problems we have, but I would actually prefer to do a bigger overwork or rework of things so that it's just not even necessary. Um, and then the second question about proposals. When will the proposal number 57, which applies a collection power requirement for wild leagues, be implemented into the game? I don't know yet. This is all part of our planning that we have to do. So just because players propose something, I mean, players can propose literally anything and approve it, doesn't mean that we are just going to drop everything that we're doing and go ahead and start working on it. So there's actually quite a number of proposals that have been passed. I think that's great generally that the community is proposing things and working on things, but this is part of what we are going to be kind of sitting down with the team. Investigator, who's on here, will be a key player in those discussions of like, okay, how much work are these things? When can we slot them in? Who can do them? And that type of thing. So I don't have any dates or plans specifically for any of the individual proposals. We are going to do our best to honor what the community wants and has voted for and get that into the game, but we're not going to we're not going to drop everything to do that. So, look for updates on those things in January as we have more of a plan for what we're doing next year. The next question is about tundra and canyon plots. It's a good question. I'm glad it was brought up. Is there a fixed plan for tundra and canyon plots in 2.0? Because as people may or may not know, they only get a 5% bonus, but for more elements, whereas the other plots get 10% bonuses for fewer elements. I kind of wanted to see how that went for a little bit, but after looking at that, I do agree it's something that should be changed. And I have again also a number of ideas of how to change it. And it's something that I don't think we have to wait till Land 2.0 for. It's really unrelated to Land 2.0. It's the type of thing that maybe we can propose, see if there's support from the community, and then put in that change as just one of the regular land updates. But I do generally agree that that it's not great that they only get a 5% benefit rather than 10% for certain elements. Uh, about conflicts is the next question. While replacing the old system for conflicts has certainly had a big benefit for card values, the way it's executed seems to be regressive, meaning that because of the way it'll work, paying tickets, I think that means vouchers, for the ability to get airdrops for 5 cards at a time, it means it's more expensive to get your airdrop value out of your cards with lower BCX. It's not a case of whales getting more because they spent more. It's a case of whales having to spend less to get the value that everyone who bought Rebellion and holds is getting. Was this done on purpose? If not, is it too late to try and come up with a fix that works less like a regressive tax, punishing people who bought fewer packs by making it more expensive per airdrop for them? So, I guess it wasn't like specifically on purpose in the sense that we weren't going and saying like these people should have to spend more than these people or vice versa. But again, I tried to look at it less like this is how the old system worked and worry about that, and it was sort of uh, design this from scratch at least economically. And again, the idea came from Nate, so thank you, Nate. But I definitely worked out a lot of the numbers and things. Um, so yes, I mean the point is correct in that if you have the same number of different cards, one player has them at max level, one player has them at halfway to max level. The players would have to spend the same number of voucher tokens in order to get the mage wagons to put that same number of cards on, whereas the player who had lower level cards, would get fewer airdrops and airdrop points, even though they spent the same number of vouchers. Um, I'm not necessarily sure that that's a problem. It's also only the term like punishing people or a regressive tax is also just looking at how it worked before. And it's sort of making the assumption that the way it worked before was somehow a correct way and that the way that we're doing it makes it worse. I mean, you could also look at it that like previously, um, the players with had bought fewer packs sort of got more than what they should have been getting in some way. So what I was trying to do and what I was thinking about was more that we should encourage people to level up cards, right? Again, what I was talking about before with the ranked battles and things, like I always want people to I want to encourage them to level up cards, and we also want to encourage them to stake SPS and get voucher tokens. So yes, if you have lower level cards, you will be getting less per voucher token spent than someone who has the same number of higher level cards. But what I'm saying is I kind of think that's a good thing. I think it incentivizes things properly. And yes, players who spend more, players who have more stuff in the game are going to get more. And it might not be linear, right? It might not be exactly there might be even it might be a little bit of a curve as it is here where they get even progressively more. Because we do really want to encourage people to combine cards and get higher level cards and level up. And we want to discourage people from, if you have a linear thing, it might encourage people to split up amongst different accounts, or it at least doesn't discourage it. So here we want to actually encourage people to consolidate and level up your cards because you get more efficient benefits as far as vouchers. And that, like, even though it is technically more efficient, it's actually not that much from an actual dollar cost standpoint. And if you are staking SPS tokens, you may not have to spend anything for the vouchers, either the whales or the lower level players. So, that's another thing to factor into this. Yes, it may be technically more efficient for voucher, but how much is it really? And is that actually a problem compared to the benefit of trying to encourage people to combine their cards and level up their cards, which is so important for the overall ecosystem. So that's where I currently stand. Whereas that extra little bit of encouragement for people to combine those cards and to go and get those cards higher level is probably worth the slight disadvantage uh, from a voucher standpoint. Node licenses. Are there any long-term plans to involve the nodes having any value in the game, or having any game value? Perhaps giving some value to regions with nodes assigned to them in land, or to guilds whose members have nodes. Yeah, I mean, initially the thinking was that nodes were sort of separate, in the sense that nodes were going to be how the infrastructure for the game is run, and that's separate from the in-game economy itself. And the whole SPS validators thing, again, is one of those projects. It's similar to Soulkeep in a way, where it 100% has not been dropped, and it's being actually furthered with the whole GLS, the Genesis League ecosystem, where those are being used. But it's one of those things that I don't think makes sense to be the highest priority right now for the company. But I do want to figure out a way, if there's a way we can still get that built and live in parallel without taking resources away from the other things I talked about as being higher priorities. And to me, that's where the node licenses really will come in. Like, that's what they're for. They are for operating this infrastructure that's ultimately going to operate the SPS token and the game in the future. So I haven't really thought about giving them value in game. But that being said, especially since we don't have a timeline at this point for when that will go live and they will be active as part of running the infrastructure for the game, that might be a good way to give them additional value and to get more excitement back into them, and reward the players who have purchased them, which includes myself. So it's not out of the question. I think it would make sense and would be cool to add them in. um, I just haven't really thought of them that way so far. Land 1.6 question. Well, then it talks about phase 2. So I think it's a phase 2 question. In phase 2, part 4, days that storage will be rentable. Is this just part of the ecosystem, or will we be able to rent storage efficiently from other people in our region? Um, I feel like there's 2 questions in there. So I'm going to stop there and answer that and then get into the rest of the question. Yeah, I thought about definitely, like, why not let players rent their storage? If you build a storage facility, you can rent it out. I didn't include that yet in the white paper. So that's not to say, again, it's a draft. It's not to say that that can't be part of the thing. But the way I really thought about storage is that for almost all cases, you wouldn't really need it unless you were providing liquidity. So all of the buildings are planned to have a certain amount of storage for all the resources that are part of those buildings. Um, So if you're just doing normal land things, harvesting resources, refining resources, whatever, you should for most of the time have the storage space that you need for everyday operation. And there may be certain times when you need to get extras to do a large building upgrade or something that you may need to get a little more. And that's where storage is available. But then the main thing for storage is like if you decide you want to focus on liquidity, you might use your land plots for storage. So we definitely can allow people to rent out that storage to others. But if others aren't really needing to rent storage very often, and the people who provide liquidity are probably going to build their own rather than rent, because that probably wouldn't be as economically efficient. So I wasn't sure if it made sense. So that's one of those things. Like it shouldn't be too hard to add in at some point if we see that's something that players want or that's useful as part of the ecosystem. But I didn't see that as something that would really be used very often since players would have their storage that they need most of the time as part of the buildings that they make. Hopefully that makes sense of why that's not in there. So the second part of the question is that so far between taxes, storage, transportation, and desalinization, it seems like costs are all systemic and they're designed to make the economic game of land difficult to work profitably. I'm hoping for lots of benefits for efficient regions and people working together to make the economic game feasible and fun. Yeah, so that's a really good question. It's an important thing for people to understand. Um, this is very different from a traditional Web 2 game. And in a traditional Web 2 game, like an empire building type game, that's sort of similar to this resource management, you're going to be able to come in and not spend any money. It might take more time, but you're going to be profitable in the sense that you're going to be outputting more resources than you're putting in, right? That's how those games work. And if you just want to speed it up, you can spend money. But this cannot work that way, right? This has to be different because all of the resources are able to be sold for real value on third party markets. So if we built a system that works similar to those traditional games, where you essentially produce more resources than you put in over time, um, it's just going to be botted to hell, right? I mean, it's just that's an unlimited resource production thing. You put in a little bit of resources, you get out more than that, and then you sell them, right? So that's just going to be it's just going to make the resources just keep being dumped on markets, and there'll be initial jump in price as people need to get things, and then things are just going to be dumped and dumped and dumped and dumped and dumped. So the difference here is that the value is going to come from two things. It's going to come from the Secret of Pretoria project, which that value is secret, and it's more for the people who want to sort of put their faith in that and contribute to it long term. And the second place, the main value is going to become from the item and spell cards, right? So it's land is probably um, you're not going to produce more resources like in value than you put in land resources, but you're going to have to put in, and you'll probably have to buy things. You're not going to be able to make it yourself to get the resources in order to produce the item and spell cards. And that is where we hope it ends up being profitable. And that all comes down to what I talked about earlier. Are we able to make the onboarding experience good and take advantage of marketing and bring tons of new people into the game? All these new people are probably not going to ever own land. They're not going to be able to own land. They're probably going to be priced out of land. That's on purpose, right? We do want to add in ways where everyone can participate in land in some way. I think that would be great for everyone to be able to participate in the ecosystem and do things in Pretoria. But actually owning land plots is very purposely not something that the majority of Splinterlands players are going to be able to do in the future. That's the goal. Um, and so all these players are coming in. They're going to be playing the game. They're going to be playing ranked battles. And in order to play ranked battles, they're going to need item and spell cards, just like they need monster and summoner cards. So that is where the value is going to come from. And the idea is, yeah, if you own land, I know people have already put in a lot of value. They've bought their land. They've got their DEC. They've done all these things. It's not going to be a situation likely where you're just going to be able to sit with that. Like, I got my land, I put in my DEC, I put in my worker cards. Now I'm just producing item and spell cards and I can just sell them, right? And I'm done, right? That, again, that's the same. That would be a poor economic model that would not be sustainable, right? If people have what they have and they're just able to start producing these things infinitely, even though it takes time, there's no cap, there's no stop, they can just produce them without putting any more in. That doesn't work. So really, what having the land and the DEC and the worker cards, it allows you, it basically gives you the opportunity to put in more resources that you're probably going to have to buy to produce item and spell cards that will hopefully be more valuable than the resources you put in. So it having the land and everything gives you the opportunity to spend and make a profit. It's like it is your business. It's how it creates your business. Then you're going to need to buy your input resources and produce something that's more valuable. And again, this matches how real world businesses work, right? So a real world business, they purchase their building, they build their factory, they do all this, and that they don't just sit back then and they never have to put in another dollar into their business because the factory just produces widgets. No, they have to actually take raw materials that they buy and they spend money on them. They put it into their factory, which was a large like upfront capital expenditure. That's what you guys have already done. That's what's done now. You have your land and DEC and workers. That's like the upfront capex in a business. So now in phase 2 and 3 and beyond, you will still have to buy the resources to put in to produce the item and spell cards that you can then hopefully sell for a profit. And that's part of the whole building out this ecosystem and making sure there's enough demand for items and spell cards so that happens. And then you can take some of the money you made from buying items and spell cards and then buy more of the resources that you need to put back in and then continue to grow your business. So it's a very different mindset than the traditional Web 2 resource management game. I really want to encourage people to think of this like running a real world business. And there's these upfront capital expenditures, which you guys have mostly done who have land and are operating it right now. But you are still going to need to put in money, put in resources on a regular basis in order to produce these goods. And initially in phase 2, when you can't produce the items and spell cards yet, you won't be able to produce the goods. So it's more of, and you would put up the funds, you would buy these resources to get a head start on producing things in the future. And some people may not want to do that, and that's fine. You might wait and say like, well, I'm not making anything that I can sell for a profit yet, so I don't want to put in anything yet, and that's fine, and that's even encouraged. Like, but some people may choose to get a head start, um, and ideally there will be some advantages to doing that. So again, that was one of my longer rambling things, but that's a good question, in my opinion. As far as like the way I hope that people look at land, because you are gonna have to be constantly buying things and getting things and putting them in. You're not just gonna be able to sit back and say, I got my land plots, I got my DEC and my cards, and now I'm just gonna start pumping out items and spells and it's all profit. That's not how a real actual business works. All right, that is the end of the pre-sorted questions. I guess let's get the Q&A session started, both in the Discord town hall chat and in YouTube and Twitch. And again, Ron, feel free to jump in here and there to let me know if we have questions in YouTube and Twitch, and I will get to those. Give it a second here. I know everyone's got their questions like ready and they're copied, and they just control paste them right in there as soon as I say that. I'll start with the questions that came in even before Ron posted. The official Q&A session is now open. So MetaMick has a question about storage. If I have 20 plots in the same tractor region, do I need to have multiple storage facilities for different products, or can I store it all in one plot, providing the building is large and upgraded enough? As it's currently designed in the white paper, storage buildings are only built to store certain types of resources. So you won't just be able to store all different resources in the same storage building. You would need to, if you want to store stone and you want to store grain, you would need separate storage buildings on separate plots for those. So that's part of things you would need to consider when you're deciding what you want to do, what you want to store, and how do you operate your plots. There may, some storage buildings like store more than one resource of the same type, so that would be fine. And it's mentioned that different resources that can store in the same building might take up more storage space per unit than others. But other than that, if they're totally different types of resources, they would need different storage buildings. Question from Icy Flow. Where is fixing live tournaments in the timeline of things? It would be nice to have them again. I didn't know that live tournaments were broken, but I don't have any answers. If you're saying when this or when that, there's no answers yet. We have not sat down and done planning for all these things. But you know,
In chat,
yeah, go ahead.
in chat earlier, Clay said something about he's been working on live tournaments for the past 3 days, or he's been working on the tournaments. Is that what the question's about?
Yeah, I don't know. It just says fixing live tournaments. So I don't know if there's a technical issue with them that they're broken, which obviously we would try to fix any technical issues for features that are not currently working. If it's as far as like just creating new live tournaments from the DAO, yeah, that's a Claiborne thing, and that's a DAO responsibility. Question from Gathering the Magic: Can the maintenance penalty for not paying be changed from losing a building level to reduced production? If the maintenance cost isn't paid, the plot loses 25% productivity every week until it is paid. I think losing a building level is too extreme and may cause players not to level their building for fear of losing that hard-earned level if costs can't be paid. Yeah, possibly. Again, this was just initial thoughts of how this could work. You know, but I guess that makes sense too, and it's a similar result, right? If you don't pay maintenance, you can't produce as much. Your building is falling apart. Things aren't working as well. So I think the goal is the same, or the result is the same. You get less production, and so maybe that makes sense. That it just reduces production, but your building doesn't actually fall in level. So that's a good suggestion. Question. Oh, for Nate, an investigator. What specifics of onboarding would you like to tackle first? Thank you for addressing the question, not to me. It is helpful to have my voice get a break for a little while. So take it away.
What do you think, Harry?
Probably the first thing is to redo the tutorial. I mean, that's what I think should be addressed first. Also, probably a little shorter term goal. I mean, I know that you did some work with Weirdbeard on doing kind of a academy new player introduction to the game that's just never got past the mock-up stage. It'd be nice to actually implement that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for onboarding, I think I would go so far as to say I'm just babbling. Like, who knows? In January we'll plan things out, and Matt'll help us decide. Like, okay, this is reasonable. Let's go do this or let's do that. But if a guy could dream, right, then there's two things at the top of my head, which would be probably like a revamp of novice. Just make the entire onboarding experience is novice league essentially. Your very first game and then the games that come afterwards in the short term are all just learning experiences as you work your way through novice. Novice is the onboarding experience, is how we could probably approach this a little bit. And then the second thing would probably be the emotional investment that comes with being experiencing the game and the ecosystem for the first time. Right now there's so much emphasis is on economy and tokenomics and the financial investment. But just looking at ROI, it usually results in fair weather friends. It's like you're not really building a whole strong sense of loyalty if the token value is up or down or whatever. It's like, so does your loyalty, right? But if you can like capture their imagination, you could take them through that wardrobe and into Narnia and make them feel like, hey, you're a battle mage. You're not some guy who spent $20 and you're trying to learn a card game. No, you're a battle mage. You're going into the arena. And even if it's like a little cut scene, like what we do with the trailers, or maybe it's like a taste of story mode, whatever it could be, whatever we could do to add sense of drama, some sense of engagement, of storytelling right there at the beginning, then just like, I think they'll be a little bit more forgiving on some of the learning curve, or as we take steps over the next few years to try to polish things up little by little, they'll be a little bit more forgiving because they'll have that emotional investment, not just their financial investment. And people who are emotionally invested are more likely to stick around and figure stuff out, because we captured their heart. There's a little bit of soul there in the game. I want to inject more soul right at the beginning. So that would probably be my feedback on a great onboarding and new user experience.
Sing it, soul sister. Yeah, I mean those are very in line with what I was thinking too. And from my perspective, even though I wasn't asked, uh, I really would like to turn it over to the team generally. I mean, I'll put in my input, but have this be a real like group project of like figuring out how to do this and do this well. And sometimes I've learned like with Rebellion where I kind of just like step back and let other people go take it and run with it. They do a really good job. So my goal is to just have this experience be a lot better. And people like Investigator and Nate and others in the company, I think, can do a good job of coming up with the details and getting it done. So thank you guys. All right, jumping on to the next question, which is 3 questions from Key to the Gate. Let's assume third party starts to develop Soulkeep further. Will, and then there's 3 bullet points here. Will the promises given in the original roadmap dating back to the pre-sale announcement be respected? Yeah, so that's, I mean, my goal here is 100% not financially motivated for Splinterlands at all. My goal is to make it right to the players who purchase Soulkeep packs. So that's what I am looking for in this agreement. You know, Happy to give up some financial opportunities to the third party that will take this over, but in return, they have to respect the promises and things that were made to the community. That's the goal here. Is we already sold the pack, so we had our financial benefit already. So now the goal is to deliver on that. So that's 100% an important thing that we will make sure is codified in any legal agreements. Um, Will Soulkeep be part of the Splinterlands ecosystem, I suppose SPS chain in the future, and not the GLX Invenium project? Yeah, I mean Soulkeep is a Splinterlands thing. GLX and Invenium is separate. So, you know, if Soulkeep is going to be using SPS and DEC and all those things, so it'll be part of the Splinterlands ecosystem, definitely. Um, will Soulkeep be a completely separate game forever, or will there be some sort of interaction between the main game land or possible future projects launching on SPS chain? I mean, either way, it's a separate game, but that doesn't mean there can be overlaps with assets. I mean, there's already overlaps with DEC and SPS. There's ideas and plans to have overlaps with Splinterlands cards, and maybe vice versa. So any game, it'll be definitely a separate game, right? It's its own game. But anything that's built within this ecosystem should have easily be able to have the assets be used in both places, right? Because all the assets are all on the same system, so they're naturally interoperable. And one comment, congratulations on an excellent Rebellion launch. The little bit I've tested new cards in the game meta design has been very good. Excellent balance between sets. Especially tactic summoners will change the game for the better. Thank you. Really appreciate that. I don't take the credit. Call me Tim, Melon Man, definitely for the design of that stuff. Nate and the creative team gets all the credit for how it looks and the UI and everything like that, and Investigator and the other developers for actually getting it out and launched and working well. So I will accept that comment and say thank you on behalf of the team who really did the work while I sat back and wrote about land stuff. Question from Intrepid Surfer. Using civilization as a model, could land use research points to enable discovering new advancements through a research tree, like access to building upgrades? Yeah, so I'm a big civilization fan. I think a lot of people in the company are, and I thought about that stuff. So there's always there's always trade-offs. So sometimes we start and we're like, okay, now we're going to have research trees and all these different things and do this, and that's really cool. And then it's a question of, okay, well, how much longer is that going to take to build or put out? And then we have to, it's not just making a tree and you can unlock things. Each of those things you unlock actually has to do something, and you have to design all those things and making sure it's balanced and makes sense and all that stuff. So there's certain point, you kind of throw everything at the wall and have all these ideas, and then kind of go and say, well, we probably don't really need this, or this isn't as important, and these things, and we kind of pull back a little to try to get us to something we can actually launch. So that's one of those things where it seemed like a really big thing, and I thought it would be best to pull back on that for now. But there's also the whole concept of, I know we've talked about the secret of Praetoria thing taking a number of years potentially, but it is going to be done at some point, right? People will have unlock the secret in all of the territories. And we will need ongoing things for research, and we'll be constantly, I think, upgrading the land expansion just like we constantly upgrade the game. So that could be something as like a future thing. Once the secret of Praetoria is unlocked, then potentially you could still use research, and then we would have the time and resources to add in some type of advancement tree like that. So I look at that as more of a future thing rather than a phase 2 thing. um, iProto has a question. Can you clarify how guild power contribution and mana crystals affect guild management, particularly regarding the permanent contribution policy and its impact on member removal and the current inability to convert temporary contributions to permanent ones? I think I talked about that earlier. The idea was that it would just apply to the regular contributions, not the temporary donated ones. And the idea of that is you're giving them up. They're no longer yours. You're giving them to the guild, so you wouldn't earn mana crystals for those. And my assumption was that no one would really do that except in some rare cases where like a third party is setting up a guild for someone else and purposely wants to give them to donate them guild power. But again, that's something we'll look at. Like everything, if it turns out that's not the case, and we're not just going to keep going forward with it if it doesn't make sense. But that's how I looked at it for the current white paper draft. Question: Can we open the Soulkeep beta to all pack holders? Yeah, I don't see why not. I don't. That's something maybe I can reach out to Double Coconut about and see if that's just very easy for them to do.
Well,
But
I
I don't.
think that's still running.
What's that?
I don't think that's still running.
Oh, the
Pretty sure
Soulkeep game.
yeah, pretty sure they took that down. You can see if they want to turn it back on. But yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know. Again, it's back to this position of like even to do anything requires resources and time. Uh, and I'd rather like just spend the time putting together a good plan in place for the future of the game generally, and to just launch it for everyone rather than having it be a beta. Question from Boogie: Do you currently have a team building for Soulkeep, or do you need a team to consider? No, I mean, we don't, right? We don't. We have very limited resources, and we are putting those towards Splinterlands and all the stuff we just talked about. So the goal is to find a third party team. Um, and we're pretty far in this process. It's not like we're just just starting looking for that. We have kind of a plan in place. It's just not officially signed and done. Um, but yeah, for the third parties to take it over and launch it like they would any game. Um, Dave McCoy has a question. Will research be able to be earned from any plot in the future 2.0 version, or will it be limited to just castles and keeps for production? So no, actually, research will only be from the runology tower, but the trifoil runes that you need to research will come from the castles and keeps. So that's how it will work, and those are the only ways you can get the trifoil runes, and then actually the research is from those buildings. You can build the runology tower on any plot though, so you will be able to use any plot to study the runes and do research. But you will need to get the trifoil runes, which is what is actually being researched, from a castle and keep, or on the market from someone else who got them from a castle and keep. Question from Pick: When the item and spell cards are released, will players have ghost versions of them as they do with the current cards in the packs? I mean, I guess that was the plan, but that's all part of what we're going to figure out, and try to figure out how that works when we get there. I mean, there's even a lot of question from the community: is should players get ghost cards, or should the ghost cards work as they do right now? Right, a lot of people think that no, they might be differently. So maybe if we make it so that buying a spell book uses some of the funds to automatically rent you a deck of cards. That could potentially replace the ghost version of the card. So you come in, you buy a spell book, and you actually rent real cards from the market for a certain amount of time, and then we wouldn't need ghost versions of cards at all, except for like the people who are free to play and don't have the spell book even. So that's a possibility. So I don't really items and spell cards are a little while out. There's a lot of stuff to be figured out. Um, but if there will have to be some way where you'll be able to use item and spell cards, even if you don't have them yet, at least in some limited capacity, I think. Um, Question from Quantum Nachos. With the fourth Land 2.0 post release, can you explain a bit about reasons why castle and keep owners would encourage other landowners within their within their regions to use up desalinization crystals on land frequently in exchange for their loss of taxes? This likely would be very different for castle and keep owners that sold the rest of their lands within a region versus people that keep all tract lands. No math has been done by me since I read the post only shortly before the town hall. Yeah, I guess I'm not really sure I understand the question. I mean, the desalinization crystals don't have anything specific to do with castle and keep owners. I mean, they'll benefit or not benefit the same as any other land plot owners in the region. And it's not so maybe if you're thinking that the castle and keep owners will lose taxes if people have to pay taxes, it's not. The taxes, like other things, are going to be split up into kind of two groups. So the castle and keep owners are able to capture a certain part of the taxes, um, and if the region contributes enough desalinization crystals, it lowers the other part of the taxes. So the castle and keep owners' tax income won't be affected at all by the amount of desalinization crystals that are used in the region. So if that's what you're asking, which I think makes sense, they're separate. So it's not going to really affect the portion of the taxes captured by the castle and keep owners if people get desalinization crystals or not. um Let me see. And Ron, do we have any questions from the other channels? Okay, thanks. Ron says not yet, but he'll jump in if we have some. Question from Viru5 or Virus, if the 5 is supposed to be an S. Is there a reason behind needing different storage for each magical essence type instead of one for? Uh, I think you mean magical resource type instead of one for all. Magical prop plots are more rare, so needing storage for just a few of each type will lead to more of your other plots needing to build storage. Um, well, so yeah, I mean, we could just have one storage building, for all the magical resources. I mean, we could have one storage building for all the resources, but the idea is, people generally who have a tract or a region or a bunch of plots together, they'll have, they'll only have certain magical resources because not all the magical resources are available on all the different plot types. And if you will again really only need it if you're planning to provide liquidity for those resources. So if you decide that you want to provide liquidity and need extra storage for multiple different magical resources, then yes, you would need multiple different storage units. And I think that's good, right? I think that's part of what is part of the game and deciding what you want to do and how you want to do it. If you're just using the magical resources, if you're just producing them and then using them or selling them and not providing liquidity with them, there will be uh, again some amount of storage available in the magical resource production buildings that should be mostly sufficient for you. So um, so that it really comes down to the people who decide they want to provide liquidity for magical resources will need to decide which specific magical resources they want to focus on and provide liquidity for, which again, I think is part of what makes this more of an interesting game rather than like just a one size fits all. Um, Question from Claypoint. Did you know the DAO is the top holder of both DEC and SPS? I did know that. And I think that's great. And it's more a matter of how that's put to use, I think, and how the community decides to organize that. I Since the topic was brought up, even though this wasn't specifically asked, I mean, I like to think of the DEC that goes to the DAO as burned, and I don't think, and maybe in the future it will change, but for now and going forward, I would be against any DAO proposals which spend that DEC specifically. Maybe if we get to a situation in the future where the flywheel's really in effect, and SPS is doing really well, and there's like super excessive demand for DEC, then it would make sense for the DAO maybe to use some of that. But for right now, I think putting that DEC back into the system is really going only to hurt the progress that we've made so far, rather than help it. Um, all right, I've been told we have a Twitch question. Oh, here we go. It's on the screen here from Bruce Grillis Gaming. Can we get Sean Bean to do the narration if you do an opening cinematic for novices? Oh boy, that would be awesome. I have no connections to Sean Bean, but if anyone does, feel free to reach out, and would be happy to have him if he was interested and we could afford that.
Yeah, one does not simply walk into Pretoria.
Right. Yeah. Um, it was funny when I started playing Civilization with my son, who's a Lord of the Rings fan. He was like immediately like, "That's Boromir." I was like, "Yes, yes, it is." Uh, Question from Almost Vonarch for Freedom. Oh, I like Almost Vonarch. Yeah, well, those titles should hopefully be in not too long. Could you go ahead and give the SK Soulkeep buyers their titles? Yeah, I think. I mean, I was really trying to just finish off this whole deal and get this going, and then we were gonna spend some time and sit down and like just try to get out all the promises that were made. But yeah, that's one I don't see why we need to wait on. There shouldn't be really any technical work to just throw in a few more titles. So that's something I just hadn't had on the top of my mind. But Harry, if you're taking notes, maybe that's something we could just uh, see if we can get out there. Is just give out the titles for that at some point. Uh, Question from Mondroid. Will spells from land be consumables? If not, won't you only need to buy a spell once and then never again? How will that implement long-term sustainability if your businesses produce spells and the majority of players already have what they need? Perhaps spells should be like summoners units are now, where you need 400 copies to max a common spell and they can level up and become stronger. Yeah, so we haven't like I've been purposely not sitting down and trying to figure out all the details of items and spells. A, because we have a lot of stuff to figure out before that, and B, because things change so much over time that probably a lot of what I do and come up with now would end up going out the window anyway. So at some point, as it gets closer to the actual items and spells release, we're really going to sit down and figure out the details for certain. But we are definitely planning on them being combinable to level up, just like the monster and summoner cards are. So it won't be you just get one copy of a spell and you're done. That we're planning to have the normal, common, rare, epic, and legendary rarities, and you will need to combine them together. And the combined amounts may be different. Than for the current cards. But yeah, so you'll definitely need a lot of them, and we're going to design the economy with that in mind. So we're going to see how land phase 2 is going, how many resources are being produced, how quickly item and spell cards will be able to be produced, what the current size of the ecosystem is, how much demand we expect there to be for items and spell cards, and purposely design the system in a way that it makes sense with all those variables. And then the goal for longer term, we can have sets of items and spells. So after a while, the production of these specific items and spell cards stop, and there's a new set of items and spell cards that get produced, just like with Alpha, Beta, Untamed, Chaos Legion, etc. Um, and then there's also the goal of like continuing to just grow the game and grow the demand for all of the cards over time. So even if a bunch of people already have max level versions of them, that we hopefully have new players coming in who will need to get them. We're also not discounting the idea of some type of consumability. So I don't think it would be great for the NFTs themselves to be fully consumable, but perhaps they could have charges or something like that, or you need some consumable item to be able to continually use the NFTs. So like you get an item or a spell, but maybe the item has like some type of durability and it needs to be fixed after a certain amount of time, or spells have charges or something like that. So again, these are all just thoughts and ideas that we will be considering as we get closer to the actual item and spell release. There's a whole discussion on Civ, which is great to see. Civ is awesome. Question from Fat Jimmy: when will Rooney land titles be presented to Rooney holders? Sorry if I missed this earlier. I'm not sure what Rooney. Oh, the land titles. Yeah. The prefix titles, I think, is what you're talking about. As soon as those prefix titles are added to the game in general for everything, the Rooney ones will be part of that. That's one of the number of features that we're calling land phase 1.6. The kind of 1.5 things that didn't get in for the initial release, and the team's going to work to just get those done and out as soon as we can. I don't have a time frame
I
for it.
will say that I think that's one of the things I got to review today after the town hall is I got to look at Soy Boy Roy's um, latest UI pass for the prefix titles and how that looks, and along with the leaderboard stuff that Farpatrod has been working on. We're kind of merging all that together and getting it ready for the final pass. So I see headway. Hopefully that'll be done soon and passed off to the devs so that they can kind of see how long it'll take to get it into the game.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh, great. YouTube question. Let me jump over to that. From Postbeat. Will there ever be a difference between magic harvested from different land types, i.e., water magic is more rare on a bog than death magic, but it's still just the same rarity magic? That's not planned. It's not magic. It's a magical resource. So it's a type of like resource, just like you mine stone or whatever it is. So it's the same resource. It's just like doesn't as often occur on certain types of land types, and it's more often more common on other types of land types, but it is the same research. It's not planned to be different, so there's not planned to be a distinction between a bog or some other plot that both has the death magic resource, which um I forget what that's called, but they have their names or whatever.
But I'm guessing that if you used water magic from a bog and then used that deliverable output to create food, it would probably taste different than if you got it from a river.
Okay, I'd say I didn't know that. Nate's
I'm
been
just guessing it would taste different, but
Nate's been tasting the elements on Praetoria for a
yeah.
while. Has a very refined palate there. So yeah. Uh, Let me jump back over to Discord. The guy with Lamacron tattoos. Love the title. That that definitely sets you apart. Um, Question: will my grain farm on my canyon be removed with phase 2.0 or grandfathered in? If removed, will I be compensated for the time crystals building in a box used so I can immediately set up a building in 2.0? That's a good question. You definitely won't be able to have a grain farm on a canyon, but as far as what the upgrade process is, we haven't figured out yet. So those are all things we'll be taking into account. When we get to that the upgrade process from 1.5 to 2.0. Um, Marshall Bebe Omega of Uprine that has not so much of a question, but the question was in caps, so I'll read it. I just want to wish the team great holidays and express my gratitude for everything you've done and for being so awesome. Thank you guys, and let's fire 2024 on all cylinders. We are going to make it. Thank you. I really, a number of people have reached out to me and hopefully other team members from time to time with supportive comments, and that is always extremely welcome amid the sea of complaining type comments. So I really appreciate that, and it obviously goes out to the whole team. So I hope the team, I think they do similar to me, just likes doing this because of those type of comments and knowing how much the community and our players appreciate it. So thank you for that. um Question from Birds, Bees, and Trees: should Barashkakor gain another ability at level 4 or maybe another attack? So that's I don't think we have any. I don't know if any of you guys want to take that one, but that's really more of a question for Call Me Tim, who's not on today. But maybe I'll just forward that to him, and uh, he can maybe post a response in chat at some point. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
I mean, right now when you go to level 4, you get 1 extra health, which I could understand could be underwhelming for a legendary, cool looking guy like that. I'm a big death fan, so I'm on board. Like, yeah, let's give him something else. But yeah, you're right. It's a call me Tim thing. Uh, so yeah, when that conversation is had, then I would definitely be, you know, I I would be open to that, to championing that idea with call me Tim. But
Yeah, early on, I feel like there were a lot of, when I was like first doing like alpha and beta card stats and stuff like that. There were a lot of cards like they just, got a really small benefit at max level, or a similar benefit to the other levels. And after a bit, I was like, no, that doesn't make sense. We really want max level to be a serious upgrade. So I kind of agree uh, with Nate that 1 health is not a serious upgrade or like kind of worthy of max level. So that's something we could definitely take a look at, and I'll suggest that to Call Me Tim and probably Byzantinist. Question from Quantum Nachos. Renting land or land surfing, where in land versions most likely will they be introduced? Do I understand right that each region will have 50-ish markets for resources, not just one market for each resource globally? Yeah, as far as land surfing, I mean, that was a plan for the 1.5 phase. Obviously, things will have to work pretty differently in phase 2 when there's actually like buildings and levels and all that stuff. So, one of the things I've still kind of been working out is, how exactly we plan for land rentals to work in phase 2. But the current stuff that's been discussed for land surfing is a 1.5 thing that, we'll see. We'll try to get out, as part of those other things we want to add to 1.5 when we have time. And as far as the markets, I kind of went back and forth over whether there should be one global market or one for each region, and for now landed on global markets for the resources. Um, it just, if there was a different market for, it's like 150 regions times 50 resources, is just like a ridiculously spread out liquidity. There would just be so little liquidity available in almost every region. It would kind of be a nightmare and a big mess. So one thing I was thinking as a possibility would to be potentially do it by territory. So there would be 7 different markets for each resource. But even that is a ton, like 350 different liquidity pools. And I do really want to have deep pools if we can, like, or as deep as possible. So for right now, the plan was just global liquidity pools for each of the resources that can be accessed, obviously from each region or anywhere in Pretoria, to try to get deeper liquidity pools to make it easier for people to trade more, significant amounts of resources without like huge slippage or loss in there. Question from Azul. I guess it's getting pretty close. We should cut off the questions now. We only have about 10 minutes left. I'll try to get through everything that's there already. But Ron or Azaria, if you're listening, please. All right, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so Azul is asking, have you ever considered reworking immunity since you reworked cripple? It doesn't really make sense to being immune to cripple as you guys have described it in the past. It's like having your bones broken. It also doesn't make sense to be immune to a snare. Um, yeah, I agree, and I try to think of things and how they work as to how they might work realistically. Like if you're actually breaking someone's bones or throwing a net on them. Again, that's something that's more in Call Me Tim and Byzantinus area than mine at this point. So it's a good question, and I guess, well, I'll pass it on and see if they have any thoughts on that. Um, Question from Rudy Edwards. Do I understand it correctly that if I want to provide liquidity for a resource, I'm going to need a separate plot for a storage building since there is a limit of 1 building per plot, or will storage be upgrades to existing buildings? Currently, the idea is yes, you will need a separate plot for storage. I mean, unless, like I said, other buildings that produce resources will have um, a certain small amount of storage for those resources. So if you want to just provide a little liquidity, that might be fine. But the idea is you would need to use a plot for the storage building for your liquidity, and that's on purpose. Again, like we want people to need more plots and need to decide what they want to use them for, and not just be able to use one plot for all sorts of different things. That's kind of the idea of land, is to decide what you want to do and organize your plots accordingly. So that is how it's planned to work currently. Um, let me see where the next question is. All right, question from Intrepid Surfer. If I missed any, please let me know. I just kind of scrolled through quickly and I'm looking for the word question, preferably in caps and bold, but I might miss some. Uh, this is at 12:44 p.m. Eastern. At what point will the company replenish its DEC chest, and how will they acquire more DEC? Good question. I mean, we already are, and at this point, rather than buying DEC directly, we've been buying SPS, and we plan to burn it for DEC. So, for those of you who don't know, um, when people use credits to purchase packs or cards on the market from other players, the company is the one that actually pays out the DEC. So the company is constantly paying out DEC, and we're also taking in funds for the credits. And when we have a big pack sale like the Rebellion pre-sale, we get a lot of DEC from the sale that we use, and then we just pay that out over time. When we run out of that, then we just have to go buy DEC like anyone else would need to. I mean, the company over the past year or two has bought billions and billions of DEC off the market with those funds. And we've gotten to the point where we've kind of eaten through all of the, or most of the DEC we've gotten from the Rebellion pre-sale. And at this point, rather than just directly buying DEC, we've started buying SPS, and we're gonna burn it, and we'll probably oscillate back and forth if depending upon market prices and different things. But it's just, yeah, something good to keep in mind, that all those credits purchases lead to DEC purchases from the company, or DEC or SPS purchases and DEC burn for DEC. um all right, cool. So we reached the end of the questions. I don't see any more in YouTube or Twitch. We have a few minutes left, so I just want to kind of reiterate and maybe mention a little more about the plan for 2024. So aside from land, um, m- my area of focus, the thing I think that's most important for us to focus on, is getting the entire new player onboarding experience to be like not just solid but like awesome, in my opinion. And not just like how to play the game, but just understanding why you want to own resources versus rent, or assets versus just renting assets, and like understand how the game is more similar to physical card games like Magic or Pokemon than digital ones like Hearthstone or MTG Arena, and really just understanding the value in it for players of owning assets, and all these things. And I think if we can really get that to a good point, we'll be able to take advantage of some marketing opportunities that we can, types of things that we've tried in the past but that haven't worked out. And I think it's because our experience for players when they got into the game was lacking. So I wanna fix that, and I want to really hit the marketing and promotion strong later next year. And I just see that as our springboard for just taking off again, and sustaining that takeoff, not have a huge jump with a bull market and then crash back down, but like a sustainable large growth for this game, and to bring it more like mainstream versus like a niche thing. But that's going to require some sacrifices. I think it's a long term thing. It's going to require the company internally to be very careful about managing its expenses, so we can spend the time to do all this, uh, and while not bringing in as much like short term revenue. Um, and it's going to require the community to be on board with us putting a lot of our focus into this, and less focus into new things in the game, or fixing or changing as many things in the game as we might do otherwise, that you guys might want. Like, we're going to try to, we're obviously going to need to fix things and add things and do things here and there. But as much as possible, I want to focus on getting more people and then more value, more money into the ecosystem. um, so, hopefully our players can be understanding of that, and help us, right? You guys can help. Every rebellion pack you purchase helps. Every SPS you purchase off the market helps, right? That allows us to keep going and not need as much short-term revenue. Not selling your assets helps. And even if who knows what the market's going to do, things might go back down, even though they've done well for a little while. We don't know. So we need to work with our player community, you guys, the DAO, everyone together, and we may even ask the DAO for a similar type of thing that we did with Rebellion. Maybe if we do a promo card sale, we may ask the DAO for some funds to help do that and maybe split the revenue again, uh to help us with these things. So it's going to be a group effort here. I would love to be in a situation where the company just has sort of unlimited funds and resources to go do all this stuff and not ask the player base or the DAO for anything. But we're not there. So I'm kind of going out and I'm asking all of you to work with us on this, and to make this happen, because I do really feel like if we get that experience for new people to the level that I'm imagining it being, where it's just like fun and interesting, and they get it and it takes them through this whole thing. Like there's a point where people like get it and they understand, like, this isn't a free to play game. This is different from a free to play game, and it's better. And here's why. And this is why I should buy cards and rent cards and try to get higher level and get land and do all these things. And if we can have people just be able to come into our website knowing nothing about it and get taken through that whole experience and get that understanding, um, that's how this takes off. And I really want to be in a position where that happens, and then we can just go out and push this and market and get it everywhere and put it in front of people, and know that the people who click on the links or hear about us somewhere and go to the website and try it out, like they're going to be taken care of, and they're going to have that awesome experience that gets them to be eventually like all of you guys are core, most dedicated players. So that's the focus. That's going to be the main thing for 2024, uh, and to set us up for great things beyond that. And again, I appreciate everyone here's help to date, and going forward in making that happen. So, with that being said, I want to wish everyone very happy holidays and a happy new year. And we will come back in January with new releases, hopefully a more detailed roadmap. And I think we'll start the next town hall call. Should be let's see, Monday, January 8th. I think. Let's try to get something scheduled, and we'll talk to everyone then. So, thank you, everyone. Talk to you in a few weeks.
Happy
This
holidays.
is a story, the one where we will not accept defeat.